Hey guys, I recently acquired a few radios and I thought I'd take some time and show them to you. The first one I would not have if it was not for YouTuber Antique Radio and TV, who did me a huge favor by delivering it right to my front door. It was a set that I saw listed in the classified section at the Antique Radio Forum months ago, all the way back last December I think. And I tentatively said that I would take the radio. The only problem was the set was way up in northern Wisconsin near the Minnesota border, and month after month I just never found myself going out that way, so we had pretty much decided that the deal was just never going to happen. When out of the blue, Antique Radio and TV, aka Tom, said he was going to be vacationing in this area and asked if he could stop by and see my collection. And it just so happened that he was traveling through Minnesota, so I tentatively asked him if he was going to be going anywhere near this antique shop where his radio was sitting at, and he said yeah, he'd be going fairly near it, and he picked it up, and lo and behold, a couple Friday nights, late at night, he and his son showed up at my front door with the radio. So let's go take a look at it. What this radio is a Stromberg Carlson 231R chairside radio. They call it a chairside because it's really as much a piece of furniture as it is a radio. Typically you'd put this at the end of a sofa, you know, like an end table. Very cool Art Deco radio made about 1936. Stromberg Carlson was known for making fairly high-end stuff, so very well-made radio. Quite heavy as well, a lot of solid wood in this. So, it's an odd setup here. We've got the control knobs along the back here. Volume, stations, i.e. tuning, fine and coarse. Rotates, a little bit stiff, I imagine. Some of the bushings are worn out and it needs some lubrication. There's a logo, Stromberg Carlson. Ranges, yellow, red, and green, which I assume correspond to this dial, which is very faded. Originally, I imagine those had more distinct colors. And then on-off tone. Let's see, from what I can see, I'm sure it covers a broadcast band. Somebody's penciled in a lot of stuff on here. And looks like there's a couple shortwave bands. Probably something like 3.5 to around 6. And then 6 up to 12 megahertz. Does have an eye tube for tuning. So the radio chassis sits kind of right under here. So it's a regular radio chassis that would be on its side, and they just rotated it so that it's pointing straight up. And the speaker is located down here in between these slats. There's grill cloth down in there. To get at the radio, they provide you with a service port on the back, where unfortunately there is some veneer damage, but not the end of the world. I mean, as far as damage goes, it's in the best place because it's the least visible. Normally this would be against a wall or a piece of furniture. The way you get this off is you remove these screws and then it slides out. What I don't understand though is why they arranged it so that it slides out down. Meaning that you cannot get this off unless you tip the radio on its side. I suppose it's more aesthetically pleasing, because if you could slide it out up, that means they would have had to kind of notch this out and you'd see the edge up here. So I will grab a mat to set this on and tip it forward and show you what's inside. I've set the radio face down on a scrap of carpeting to protect it. Now we can get a look at the bottom and the back. So here's that panel. I've taken 4 of the screws that were holding it in place out. I think there should be 3 more along the bottom here where it's so chewed up. Also notice there's some holes drilled in here. I imagine those were for antennas. Clearly this got wet at some point. Not only is the veneer separated, but the plywood is coming apart as well. So perhaps it would be just as well to replace this entire piece. It's nothing too fancy. There's no tongue milled on the side or anything. It's just a big rectangular piece of wood. So we've got some damage on that. The only other damage I've found on this so far is this big piece of wood on the bottom. It's split in half. But I imagine a little bit of wood glue and some clamping, and that will be just fine. Otherwise, this thing is in really good shape. As I was saying, it's built with some really solid, heavy timbers and huge bolts holding it together. So, let's see. Here's the speaker. Fairly massive field coil speaker. Well, the speaker itself I think is only 10 inches in diameter, but the field coil is huge on this thing. Quite heavy. There's an integral loop antenna, I imagine for the AM broadcast band, but I'm pretty sure this is not original, especially because it says Magnavox on it. And you can pretty clearly see where there's been some splicing going on here with the antenna. Otherwise though, I think it's all original. I'm sure this is the original speaker. And here's the chassis. I imagine this thing was fairly difficult to service in the field because, well, there's no easy way to get at it. Other than a couple of the tubes along the back, I don't know how they expected you to reach in there and replace them, other than taking the whole chassis out, which I believe involves removing these 4 large bolts, or perhaps these 4 smaller bolts, I'm not quite sure. Which I'm not going to do right now, but I'll try to show you the radio as best I can. Let's see. There's the tube charts. So we've got a 6G5 tuning eye tube, a 5Y4 rectifier, 6A8 oscillator mixer, 6K7 IF amp, 6H6 detector, and 6F5 audio amp, and then a 6F6 power output tube. So a fairly basic radio, common design for the mid-30s. I've got a number of Philco radios that use pretty much that same tube lineup. One thing I think it's kind of neat on this chassis is that it's got these roll bars on it, just like the Stromberg Carlson TV I have. I did some looking around online, and it seems like that was kind of Stromberg Carlson's thing on all their chassis, is they put these roll bars on it, which makes it really convenient for servicing. Because when you work on this on your bench and you want to set it upside down, you've got built-in holders right there. Don't know if it works. There's no power cord, of course, and you know, I don't think it's ever had any work done on it. But the chassis looks to be in really good condition from what I can see, so I imagine it won't be too tough to get it working. So, electrically it looks pretty sound. A little bit of wood damage here, a little bit of veneer damage to the back. The rest of it is all the original finish. Plenty of scuffs and dings, but I think I can use the same techniques on this that I used on that VT71 TV off there in the distance. And by that I mean clean off all the years of wax and dirt and such with Gojo hand cleaner. Very lightly sand down the old finish and then put on some new lacquer. I especially want to retain the decals on the top. I think there's a reproduction Stromberg Carlson logo decal, but I don't know about the others. Here's another look at the front of the radio. They get some really nifty walnut veneer in here. I'm not sure what cut this is. It doesn't appear to be face cut. It's not quarter cut. I don't think it's burled. It might be that same type of butt veneer that I showed that they use in some areas on my Philco 15DX. A few scuffs, as I was saying, here and there, but overall not too bad. Certainly it's worth giving a shot to just touch it up. Probably the most annoying thing is in here. Somebody carved their name or initials or some crap in here, I don't know. Hopefully I can fill that in and it won't be too noticeable. Now, for those of you familiar with this radio, you probably noticed right away there's one glaring problem with it, and that is the glass top is missing. I pulled up an image on my computer and I'll show you what this radio is supposed to look like. Here is what the original top for my radio looks like. So you can see I'm missing both the piece of glass and the wood frame that holds it in place. As near as I can make out from studying photos and reading descriptions, it's a semicircular piece of glass, just a little bit under 2 feet in diameter. It's partially mirrored, except for this section in the middle here. This is all mirror, and it's kind of a smoky gray glass, again, except for the center where it's clear. And I believe these stripes are painted on top. So we've got some grayish silver stripes, and then glass, and then they're mirrored back, except for the middle here where it's all clear so you can see the dial and the eye tube. So I've been mulling over how I could fabricate that, or what the odds are of me finding an original one floating around out there. Well, I got some suggestions anonymously on my Flickr photo website. A couple really good suggestions, actually. One was to look around in thrift shops for a cheap 2-foot diameter mirror and cut it in half. You know, score the glass and snap it in half. And then try using paint thinner, or apparently there's a special solvent made to dissolve the silver backing. And that to me is the best suggestion for sure. Assuming the glass snapped evenly and I could remove that center section neatly, I would have the partial mirror, and then if I wanted to, I could try painting on these lines or just leave it with the partial mirror. What really kills me is I was at Menards a couple days ago and they had a pile of oval mirrors for like $5 each, just bare glass with a silver backing, but none were round. That would have been so sweet. I would have bought like 5 of them just to practice on. Oh well. I've looked around and commercially, ranging like $50 to $100 for a 2-foot diameter piece of mirrored glass. The other suggestion was to get a clear piece of round glass, snap it in half, and then use a product like this Krylon glass mirror-like paint, which apparently you can spray on, and it won't be a pure silver mirror surface, but it's a decent reflective surface, so that's certainly an option. Possibly I could find one on eBay. I saw someone in an old post on the Antique Radio forum that there was one for sale with like a buy it now of something like $100 or $200 just for the glass top. Well, I think I can rule out that ever happening again. And then finally, there's this tantalizing rumor that there's this guy, Eddie Brimmer in North Carolina, that makes reproductions for around $200. It's a fair amount of money, but if it was a really good reproduction, I'd pay $200 no problem for it. I've tried contacting him a while ago and I got no response. So I don't know. Some of these posts referring to him are from several years ago. Maybe he's not still doing it. If anybody out there is familiar with Eddie Brimmer and knows the status of him reproducing glass tops, let me know. I did find the schematic at Nostalgia Air for the radio, and as are many schematics at Nostalgia Air, the quality is really crappy, but at least we can kind of make out the tube. So there's the 6A8 oscillator mixer, and the 6K7IF tube, 6H6 AVC and detector, 6F5 audio amp, and the 6F6 output. There's the field coil speaker. There's the I tube, and there's the 5Y4 rectifier. So actually quite similar to a couple Philco radios I'm working on from 1938. So again, a big thanks to Tom, and please check out his channel, Antique Radio and TV. If you like my videos, I'm sure you'll like his. He has a lot of similar radios. Like I'm working on a Philco 38.7 chairside. Well, here's the tabletop version, 38.4 I believe. And he's got some videos. He's on a VT71, and he's also got an Admiral 19A11 bakelite TV and a bunch of other neat stuff. So please check out his channel and leave some feedback. Let him know what you think. Now, the other radios I got recently are from another YouTuber and local friend, Al, who's the owner of those couple bakelite TVs with the rectangular picture tubes on my back porch I showed you guys. Well, I'll show you what he brought. A few weeks ago, another one of these Admiral 24A12 bakelite TVs was listed on Craigslist. It was a little bit steep, although it did come with 3 radios. I'd kind of forgotten about it when a few days later my friend called me and said that he had gotten the TV and the radios for a very reasonable price. It turns out he did quite a nice job of haggling and got the price way down. Well, a few days ago he showed up with the radios and dropped them off for me. Unfortunately, they all have issues, but nonetheless, still some interesting radios. First up, Stromberg Carlson 1200, which is a fairly nice radio because it does have 5 tubes, and at first glance you might think it's an All-American 5, but actually it uses a selenium rectifier in place of one of the tubes. So really it's more like an All-American 6 if you consider that selenium rectifier to be a tube. And that extra tube they used for another stage of gain, so this is supposedly a very well-performing radio. There are no cracks in the bakelite cabinet, but it's got some really funky issues going on down in front here, where there's some stains, like tan-colored stains, that seem to go right into the bakelite. It feels a little bit rougher in those areas too, like maybe some kind of solvent spilled onto it. Bakelite's pretty impervious to just about everything, so I don't know what might have gotten on here. I guess it's possible it's even a manufacturing flaw. I don't know. I haven't tried cleaning it, but I don't think it's going to come out. Those orange splotches are just going to stay there. But otherwise, it looks to be in pretty decent shape. He said he tried powering up 2 of these radios, the ones that came with power cords. One of them didn't, but none of them worked. But it's not too surprising for radios of this vintage. I'm sure it needs new caps and maybe some new tubes. A few splatters of paint here and there, and I guess there is one scratch, but it's not too bad. Just filling it in like a little bit of shoe polish or stain would darken that up. And then there is this airline radio. Not sure what the model number is on it. Another nice little bakelite radio. It's got the original knobs, and at first glance it looks decent, but unfortunately there's a hairline crack right down here. Otherwise though, it's in good shape. It's got the original metal back, and this are the original knobs, so label's gone, so that's why I'm not sure what the model is. So these can be repaired. A little bit of super glue right in the seam, and then put some epoxy on the backside to give a little more strength. But unfortunately, to hardcore collectors, any defect in the bakelite really kills the value of it. And then finally, this, which is the neatest of the 3, which is an Emerson 540A, also known as an Emersonette. I'd never heard of these before, so I did a little research online. Turns out they came in 4 colors: red, green, brown, and I think white. But the red and the green are the especially valuable ones. I've seen them listed on eBay for several $100s. Not sure if they sold for that much, but at least they're listed for that much. This is the most common though, so not quite as valuable. And it has a nice crack all along the side here. Apparently one of the reasons these are somewhat valuable is that a lot of them get damaged, so they're somewhat scarce. And the red and the green ones are kind of bold looking, so I guess people really like those. Otherwise though, looks to be in decent shape, other than the back being a little bit messed up. It's just cardboard, so I imagine it's, you know, just deteriorated with age. I'll try to salvage it though, because it does have a loop antenna built into it. I'll kind of soak some glue into the cardboard to reinforce it, patch it up, give it a little paint. But as a radio goes, it's very cool because it's possibly the smallest bakelite tube radio that anybody produced. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 tubes are crammed in there, along with a filter cap and so on. So this is you know, an AC radio. Plug right into the wall, and it's this small, which is quite an accomplishment for the designers at the time. So that should be fun to work on. Alright, that's it. I'm gonna get back to all my other projects. Hope you enjoyed this look at 4 new radios.